on, everybody? How's everybody doing today? FAQ&A Thursdays, and we are back with a great presentation we're going to have today, going over lead captures and workflows. I'm super pumped. Just want to make sure that we're running in Facebook, and it looks like we are. This is perfect. Technology is working for us today. So awesome. Well, we'll jump in and get started. And how we're going to run it today, we'll kind of do it like we did last week, through the full presentation of everything. I'll run through the full webinar, and then at the end, if you guys do have questions, I'll be looking on Big Marker as well as Facebook Live, and I'll answer some questions at the questions. Go ahead and hold on to those, and then once I'm finished, I'll go through, and then you guys can start typing in your questions, and I'll get those answered for you. So hopefully you guys are doing fantastic. I'm excited about today. Today's really on the calls that we do here at Dubsado, I've gotten a lot of questions about starting workflows, getting people into the system, lead captures, how it all works together. How can I map my workflow properly? So that's what we're going to cover today, because I really want to get this information out there for you, because I think that once we go through this, a light bulb will click on, and you guys will be able to go and write your workflows and get everything set up, and you'll kind of understand from how to get into the system, how to get used to everything, and set up your roadmap so that you can be successful using the system. So we'll go ahead and get started here. Let me share my screen with you guys, and we'll open this and share that. Perfect. You guys should see my forms pop up there. Looks like it's working well on Facebook, so we're good to go. All right, let's jump in and get to it. So what we're going to cover, obviously we're going to go over lead captures. So I wanted to start from this page underneath templates and forms. And so the lead capture form is the one on the far right-hand side here. And like I said, a lot of the calls that I do with people, I notice that they have contracts, questionnaires set up, maybe some proposals, but a lot of times they're overlooking that lead capture. And to be honest, the lead capture is probably our most important form, because there's so many things that you can do with it. And so I want to cover all this to make sure that you guys are taking advantage of that lead capture form, because it'll be a complete game changer for you guys. So we'll jump into it, and then we're going to cover all the basics here. So we're going to cover everything from just setting up your lead capture, what it does, mapping client information, workflows, all of that good stuff. So we'll jump in here, and I'm going to go into this lead capture. So the first thing we'll talk about here is, what is the purpose of the lead capture? What is the point of this form? What do from a functionality standpoint? The purpose of the lead capture form is to get new leads into Dubsado. Plain and simple, that's what this form is designed to do. So if you have a website, it would replace like a contact me that you would embed on your website, or if you click on, contact us, this is the form that would pop up. And what this does is, once someone fills this form out, they automatically get created in Dubsado in the projects area. So what it's designed to do is to collect that contact information from the client, or whatever those first few pieces of information that you need from them are, and it brings them into Dubsado automatically. So right there from the start, that's one why you want to use this form, is because this is the form that gets people into the system and gets them started with a project, gets them set up, and then you can start communicating with them once they have that project set up. So first and foremost, that is the overall usage, or the overall functionality for the lead capture, is to do that. Now there's a lot of other things that come with this form, but that's the main thing that this form is designed to do. So the next thing I want to talk about is sharing this form. So a lot of people that I've talked to as well have shied away from the lead capture because they might not have a website that's ready. And so they automatically think that the only way I can use a lead capture form is if I have a website. And that's simply not. There's so many different things that you can do with this form. And so I want to cover a couple of those right now. So with the lead capture form, how you can share this with somebody is by clicking up here in the top right-hand corner underneath the logo. or your brand logo and click that share button. So if we click that, what it's going to do is it's going to give you two different ways that you can share this form. The first one is it gives you the iframe code. So if you do have a website, you can copy this code and then you can put that into your web builder. So if you have Squarespace or Wix or anything like that, you can copy this frame code in there, and then that would embed our lead capture form into your website. So you can replace, because I know Squarespace, I believe, has a standard one that's already on there. So you would want to replace that one with this one. And that way you can have, anytime someone comes to your website, they can fill that out and then get created in Dubsado. So that's one way that you can form, probably the most popular. But there are, or there is a direct link that you can send someone as well. So as you see here, there's a direct link to this form. So if you have this, you can send this out in a text message. You can send this out in an email. You can put this on an Instagram biography. I know that I've seen a lot of people do that. So you could have this URL in your Instagram bio. On Facebook, I know there's a place for like me, or somewhere in there you could paste that URL there. So really this URL can go anywhere. As long as someone has the URL to this form, once they pull this up or they click on it, it's going to pull this up in their web browser. So that's a way that you can share the form. If you don't have a website, take advantage of the direct link. And the other way that you can do this, and this has also become very popular with a lot of people that I've talked to, is to use the lead capture form internally. And so what you would do is you would take this URL and you would just bookmark it on your computer. So if I copy this URL, and then I'll just open this here, and what would happen is you would just open this up, and then you can just fill this out internally. So what are some good use cases for this? So the first thing that you can do is, let's say that you take a lot of phone calls and people are saying, hey, I'm interested in this, or hey, this is my information. You could just have a capture form on your internet browser here, and then you could just pull it up, fill it out as you're talking to them on the phone. And then once you submit that, they get created in the projects area. You could use this if you are at a trade show or some type of like a beauty show or something like that, where you just have this pulled up on a computer, and then people can fill this out on your computer and they can just go through and fill that out. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later, but definitely take of using that direct URL to share it with people, use it internally. You could make, I've seen people who have lead capture forms that are specifically for internal use. So they have one that's might be on their website, and they have another one that's specifically for pulling it up and filling things out just internally. So even if you don't have a website, you can still take advantage of the lead capture form. So I wanted to share a couple ways that you can share that or use it, be just embedding it on your website. So that's how you'll share the form. So we've covered that. The next thing I want to talk about is a step that really gets overlooked in the system, and that is collecting the client's information. So one thing I wanted to talk about is, since this is primarily that first point of contact that you'll have with the client, what you can do is you can collect information from that client from this form. And you can do it with other forms, but usually the lead capture is going to be where you collect upfront information. So in our system, over here on the right-hand side, this is going to be how you build forms in the system, or with these elements, if you're not familiar with how to do that. So with these elements aside, you can drag these over onto the form, and then you can ask your questions, check boxes, drop downs, all that good stuff. In Dubsado, there are two of these elements that you can use to collect information and have it map into information, job information, and that is the short answer element and the date select element. So I know a lot of people have asked about, hey, can you use drop downs for this to collect information, or check boxes? We don't quite have that in the system yet. That is something that we do have on our list, but right now the short answer and the date select are the two that you can use to capture clients. So let me show you how to do that. So with the short answer box, that's going to be your typical first name, last name, email, phone number, where the client's actually going to type in information, probably anywhere from 1 to 3 word answers, usually is what the short answer is good for. We do have free response box Those are more for if a client wants to type a paragraph. Right now, the free response boxes don't capture client information, only the short answer. So you'll have to take that into consideration. If you are using a free response box, I've seen that a lot. They have, first name and you're using a free response box, you're not going to be collecting that info from the client. So make sure you're using short answer boxes on your forms if you're wanting to collect info. So we have the short answer box. And click on this first name one. So we'll click on that short answer element. And what happens is it pops up with this window and it asks, what question are you asking? And in this case, I just have first name written in the question. And then you'll see where it has maps to drop down. And what this does is it gives you a list of all the different things that you can have their answer mapped to into the client information, into the job information. Now, we'll talk about here, as you can kind of see, there's some ones that are they don't come with the system, and we do have custom map fields, so I'll talk about those in a second. But typically on a lead capture form, you're going to be collecting kind of their basic upfront info, so first name, last name, email, phone number. So what I can do is I can choose whatever they type into this box is going to get mapped into their first name. So a lot of people, they'll have a box that says full name. You don't want to do that in the system, because then if you do that, their full name will get mapped to the first name. So make sure that every single short answer box corresponds with one of these different options in the drop down. So for this here, whatever they type into the first name gets mapped to the first name. Same thing with the last name. Whatever they type into the last name box, I have mapped into the client last name. So we do have first name, last name. We have alternate contact information. So, in the wedding industry, that would probably be the fiance's name would go into the first name, last name area. So you can take advantage of that. But first name, last name, email. So I have that mapping to the email address. This is going to be how you collect information from the client. Now, let's say that there are things that you want to collect and have it be a part of the client information, but it's not in these standard ones that come with the system. I believe in the standard ones that come with the system, it goes down to Pinterest, I think is the last one that we have. So as you can see, I have bride's mother, bride's father, groom's mother, groom's father, source, head count, make, model, referral. Referral source, actually, I can get rid of that because we actually have project tracking now, so I can get rid of that one. But anything that you have that's not in the basic ones that come in, you have custom map fields that you can create that will allow you to have their answer mapped to other things in the system, ones that are more custom for you. And where you can create those is in the settings menu. So if we go up to settings, up in the top right here, and we go down to custom map fields, the custom map fields, you can literally create anything in here that you want to collect the info and have it mapped to that client's information to display later on emails, forms, anything like that. So you have two map fields. You have client info or job info. So you have to decide whenever you're collecting the information, is this more client related and you want it to stay with the client forever? Every time you work with that client, it's the same information. A good one would be you want to map their age, or if you want to map, I guess technically any of these work too. This is more pertaining to the client. This is the bride's mother, or things that are always going to stick with that client. If it's more job related where it could possibly change each time, then you'll want to use job information to do that. Now, whenever you're creating these, let me go into create here. You can type in whatever it is that you want to map into the info. A good one here, let's do a job one, and let's see here. We can go in here and we'll go to job and we'll create one that has to do with the job. A good one is budget. Let's say you want to map in the budget info and what their budget might be for a project. So if we click here and we do budget, and then you can select the type. Now this is where the element comes into play. So you can decide whether you want to use a short answer for this or a date for this. Obviously, if it's a budget, whatever they type into a short answer is what you're going to want to map it to. So we can click short answer for that and then save that. So now if I go back to my form again, and I'll go back to my lead capture, and you can do this on questionnaires and everything else, but since we're talking about lead captures, we're going to use that. But now if I use a short answer, you'll see now that budget is now an option. So whenever they fill that out, whatever they type in there is now captured into that field for budget. So that's how you can use the forms to capture information from the client and display it elsewhere. So that's how you'll capture information on the lead capture form. So I did want to cover that as well. The next thing I want to talk about is project tracking. This is brand new to the system, and typically you would use this on a lead capture form to find out where they're coming from. How did they hear about you? So in order to do that, the first thing we'll do is we'll set up our project tracking sources. So if we go over to reporting here, underneath the reporting tab, and go to project sources, this is where you can set up the different places that people could possibly hear from you, or they've heard of you from this place. So as you can see, I have Facebook, Google, Instagram, LinkedIn. I put monster.com referral for friends and family. When you create new sources, you can choose obviously what the source and then what color is associated with that source. So once you've created your project sources, if we go back to our lead capture form now, so we'll go back to the form and jump into the lead capture here. So with the project tracking element down here, I've actually added it to the form already. And as you can see down here, it says, how did you hear about us? So if I click on this, I can actually add in those project sources that I created. And we're actually planning on releasing phase 2 of project tracking, which is actually going to show you graphs. It's going to show you how many people have inquired from Facebook versus Google. It's going to give you analytics on where you're getting most sources coming in from. So as far as displaying this information, that's going to be coming out very, very soon. That's actually next on our list. I believe believe sometime next week, I think is when it's coming out. So when you're using these, once you have people filling this lead capture out or filling out another form and they're using these project sources, it's going to collect that info. And when we release phase 2 of this, it's going to display how many sources from referrals or how many sources you're getting from LinkedIn or Facebook, the different ones that you create. It's going to track that information. So definitely take advantage of the project sources, especially on your lead capture, because that's where you're probably going to collect info from. So that's the project tracking element in the bottom left-hand corner of the element chart there. So that's how did you hear about us? And then the next thing I want to talk about is where workflows come into play with this lead capture form. So we've already kind of talked about how the lead capture, it's designed to be filled out and then they get created as a new project. But what makes the lead capture even more special is with your workflows that you create. And if you're familiar with work, it's literally your process that you have with your client. You can create that process and then have it start once a lead capture gets filled out. So with this form, we have, I'll show you the first one here. Underneath the settings, so underneath form, we'll go to settings up at the top here. The first one I'll talk about is default workflow. And the default workflow, what this is designed to do is if you have, let's just say your business is it's one workflow. No matter who comes in, it's the exact same process for every single client. Nothing changes. It's not based off of service type or the different lanes in your business that you offer. You just have one service. And once that capture gets filled out, you want one workflow to start. That's where the default workflow would come into play. So when you have your workflow template set up, you can apply a default workflow to start and it would automatically take off right when they fill out that lead capture. They get created as a project and then that workflow gets added to the project. So that's the default workflow. The other thing that you can do is you can ask a question and have a different workflow take off based on their answer, which is probably the most popular choice for different businesses. But with the lead capture form, we have the workflow element tool, which is right here above project tracking. And with the workflow element tool, when you drag that onto the form, I have it right here, it'll say, what service are you interested in? And when I click into this, you can change the question around if you want to, but I have it just as, what service are you interested in? And in this particular instance, let's say I'm a photographer. So on here, I have, are you more interested in portraits, wedding photography, sporting event photography, or newborn photography? Those are just the different lanes in my business. For designers, it could be, are you more interested in, website design, logo design, just graphic design, different things like that. So anytime that you have a business that has different lanes that they could possibly go down, that this all starts from the beginning. When they first come in and you want to get set on the right road to go down, this is the tool that you'll want to use for that, is the workflow element tool. Now let's talk about workflows in general here, because now that we have this pulled up, it's a great segue to talk about mapping out your workflows and really constructing them. So this particular part of the webinar is great for the people who haven't really started workflows yet. They're still wondering about them. How can I use them? I want to set them up. Where do I start? This is the best place to start from. So because the lead capture form is that first point of contact, typically with most businesses, that lead capture form is when they first come into the system. How you want to think about workflows is they fill out a lead capture, and based off of this answer, now they can spread out and they can start going down the right road. So the lead capture basically puts them in the right direction. It sets them on that right path. Now, when it comes to workflows, as you can see, if someone's newborn, I would want a newborn workflow to start. And why this is important is because with each option here, you might have different forms or different emails that go out if they select portraits, they would sporting events. You might have different proposals, different emails. I know probably for a fact you wouldn't have, the same wedding proposal that you would with a newborn. If someone selected newborn, you wouldn't want the same proposal to go out. Maybe it's a different one. So what this element does for you, or adding this into your process, is if I have these 4 different options and you're wanting to start workflows, what I would do is I would sit down and I would say, okay, they come in through the lead capture. If they select portraits, what happens if they select portraits? And write out that entire process. They get a lead response. Then they get a questionnaire. Then a proposal gets sent out. Then they do contract, invoice, a welcome packet. Then I have this to do that I need to get done. Write out that entire process with portraits. I would do the same thing for weddings. If they choose weddings, what's the first thing that happens? And I write out my entire process if they were to choose wedding. I do the same thing for sporting events and the same thing for newborn. Now, you might find out when you write out those processes that there's some forms that can be the same. So maybe there is a certain email or a certain form that can get sent out in each one of those different 4 lanes. But writing out your process first, what this allows you to do is get a very clear blueprint and roadmap on what content you need to build in Dubsado. I've talked to so many people who say, okay, I just got into Dubsado. There's 1,000,001 things that you can do. Where should I start? What should I build? And they immediately get overwhelmed with how much Dubsado can do. But if you set it up with this lead capture form and think about them, they come in from this point and then they split off in their respective categories. What are the actions that happen? Once you have that process written out, you'll know exactly what forms you need to build. You'll know exactly what emails you need to write because it's all for you. You know that you need a welcome email. Maybe you need a portal email. Maybe you need a follow-up questionnaire, or you could do a survey as a questionnaire. That might be a part of your process. So by looking at the lead capture form, write your process and building your content, you've basically developed your workflow, because all workflows is your process that you have, with your clients that come in, and the content that you need to send out to that client, and that put together is your workflow. So if you are in a position where I really need to start working on workflows, I want my business to have structure and have it automated or have it organized, but I don't know where to start, think about that lead capture perspective and start writing out your process first. It will help you out tremendously, because once you have that written out, you know exactly what content you need. You'll know exactly what comes after what. And when you get into the workflow, you'll already have everything prepared. All the content's there, your process is there, and then you can start going in and building your workflow. So that's definitely one of the biggest pieces about the lead capture form that I always like to mention, because it really is that first contact, and it sets the pace for all of your processes when you're getting into the system. Because what you want to have happen is this, is let's say that you're on vacation with your family, or you're going to be out of the office for 2 weeks, but your lead capture form is on your Instagram bio, or you have it embedded on your website. What you want to have is the luxury of knowing that if someone comes to your lead capture form and they say, I'm interested in sporting events, that you know behind the scenes you've laid out all the groundwork so they can move through that sporting events workflow efficiently. So that's why you want to use this lead capture form to set that pace. And then the process that starts from there, it just starts working for you. The auto email goes out, then you can have the questionnaire go out, or however your process works. You'll know that if they click on that answer, everything that follows it is already set up and structured. So I definitely wanted to cover that. That's probably the biggest piece of information with this webinar today, is to make sure people know that the lead capture and workflows, they work hand in hand. It's one streamlined process. So that's the default workflow. So that's more if you just have one process, really easy. It's the same thing for everybody. Use that default workflow option. Or if you're more different service-based, use the workflow element tool, and that can get everything set in motion for you. So I definitely wanted to cover that. The next thing I want to talk about is the difference between lead captures and questionnaires, because they could potentially be very similar. And there's kind of a gray area where it leaves the lead capture and it goes into the questionnaire. So now that we've talked about the workflow element, using that workflow element tool, the lead capture is responsible for creating the project. Questionnaires would be responsible for, once that project has been created from the lead capture, you can follow it up with a questionnaire that falls into one of these lanes to collect more info. So for example, here on this lead capture, I would ask very basic information, first name, last name, maybe what is your anticipated event date, all of that good stuff. But once they choose wedding, then I can follow it up with a full wedding questionnaire that's very detailed. You can put pictures in there that has to do with weddings, all that information that is specific for weddings. So that's where questionnaires come into play, is they will kind of follow up the lead capture. Lead captures are meant to just kind of collect that first basic information, and then you can follow it up with a more detailed questionnaire or a proposal. That's how you can kind of think about the difference between lead captures and questionnaires, because there is some crossover there where you might have some questions that belong on a lead capture or some questions that might belong on a questionnaire. So you kind of have to pace that out depending on your process. But that's how you can kind of think about the difference between those two forms, is normally the lead captures first, and then the questionnaire comes in and follows it after to get kind of a follow-up and get more information from that client. So lead captures and questionnaires, that's the between those. Next thing I want to talk about is I'll jump into the settings menu again, because there's a couple other things I want to talk about. The first thing we talked about was the default workflow. So that's if you just have that one process. The next thing that I want to talk about is the redirect URL. So what this is designed to do is that once someone fills out that lead capture form and then they get created in the projects area, you can have a redirect URL in this area here that will automatically take them to whatever URL you want them to go to. So a lot of times they'll fill out the lead capture form, and then maybe you want them to go to a thank you page that has more information possibly, or where they can download a PDF or something like that, a page that they can go to. Another great use case for this is if you're going to do, if you're at a trade show or if you're at an event and you're collecting leads, what you can do is take this direct link URL and paste that into the redirect URL. What that does for you is as soon as someone fills out your lead capture form and they submit it, it just reloads the form right back up. So you don't have to pull it up again at the trade show. You could have a laptop up and then someone comes up, they fill out their information. Yes, I'd like to know more. They click submit and it just reloads the form for the next person that comes up. So if you're ever at an event, anything like that, where you know you're going to be collecting leads and you're talking with people, hey, fill this out, and you might have a booth set up, definitely use that direct link URL, paste it into that redirect, and then it'll just keep pulling that form back up immediately after someone fills it out. So take advantage of that. There's some cool, you can use that. Let's see, the next thing I want to talk about, project statuses. Okay, so when a lead capture gets filled out, it goes into the projects area. Now let's jump over to the projects area here quickly so we can take a look at that. So if you're not familiar with the projects area, this is going to be where you manage everybody. So whether they're a new lead that comes in, whether it's a booked job that you're already working with, everybody that you're working with is in this area underneath projects. And once someone fills out that lead capture, they get set up with a new project. Now, projects in Dubsado, we've had a lot of questions about that. You can think about the projects as just like a client folder. It's the communication hub where you have everything stored, where your workflows are working. You can send forms through the project. You can send emails through the project. It's where everything gets housed. It's just that area that, you know, if you send something to the client, that's what the project is. So if I go to, we'll go to all my leads here. Each one of these is set up with a new project. So if I go into that project, this is where I do all my communication. So if I have appointment tasks that I need to do with this client, that's all the project is. So projects and clients go together. A client has a project, and you can have multiple projects for the same client potentially. Like if you're a photographer, you might do multiple shoots with them. If you're in design, you might do different designs for them, but it's all the same client. They just have different projects. So the statuses across the top up here, what these statuses are designed to do is they drop the into where that client is at in your process. So I have a status up here that is lead capture completed. That's a status that I created because whenever someone fills out that lead capture, I want them to get dropped into this funnel. That's where they're at in their process. So if I go back to my form now that you see that I have that particular status, if we go to the forms area and go back to our lead capture and we'll go to the settings menu, you can determine once someone fills out this particular lead capture form, which status they're going to get dropped into. So if I click on this, it shows me all my different statuses that I have that I've created. I want them to get dropped into lead capture completed. So that way I know once this form gets filled out, they're going to get dropped into that lead capture completed. So I know if I come to my projects page and I click on that status, I'll see all the people that are there. So that's what the project status plays. You can choose where they're going to get dropped into when they first enter in their information. The next thing right underneath there is the lead title. Now, a lot of people have had questions about this. As you can see, I have where the client name will pop up. And then I also have it where the new lead, where it says dash new lead, because you can type in here as well. What that's going to do is when they get created with a new project, if we go back to the projects page, the title is going to be the title of that project is. So as you can see, I have new lead, contact us is another one that I have, but whatever you want that title to be, you can put that in that lead capture form, and that's what will bring it in. Right now I have client name dash new lead. So if I were to fill this out, it would say their first name, last name, and new lead that would come in. And you can change that project title later, anytime in your process. So that's what the project title is for, or the lead title, but it comes in here as the title. So you can kind of think about creative uses for that, how you want them to be titled when they come in that project. And that's it for the settings menu. There's one other thing that I wanted to talk about in this webinar, because it would be very confusing if I didn't talk about this and how the lead capture works with the scheduler. So because we are talking about lead captures, we're talking about workflow of that, I do have to talk about how the lead capture works with the scheduler, because this is another piece that that's kind of been overlooked a little bit, and I want to make sure that people are aware of this as well. So with the lead capture form and the scheduler, if I go to scheduler templates, so we'll pop over to scheduler, and let's take a look at one of them, which is my 20-minute initial consult scheduler. So the purpose of this scheduler template is this is the time that I'm going to be talking with them. It's a 20-minute initial consult. I just want to introduce myself, talk about a few things, but I also want them to get into the system because they're going to be a new lead that I'm talking to. So it's very important to know that if you're using the scheduler templates by themselves cannot create new projects. Some of you who are just sending out the link to your scheduler to a bunch of people, you'll notice that once it gets filled out, they're just an appointment on your calendar. There's not a project that's set up, workflows aren't running, and so the scheduler template by itself cannot create a new project. So what you'll need to do in order to get their appointment that they book into the project, we'll need to use the lead capture in order to do that, to create that project. So with every scheduler template that you have, in the advanced tab, if we jump over there, as you can see down here, there's a place for an additional form. What that means is on every single scheduler template, you can attach a form to go with that scheduler. Because the scheduler cannot create a project by itself, it can't start workflows by itself, it needs the assistance of a capture form. So here, as you can see, our lead capture form that we created, I have that set up in the additional form. So let me save this here, and I'll show you what that looks like now. So because I'm pairing it with that lead capture form, if I were to click on this link, and let me grab this code, and let me paste it here. So now, when someone's filling out this scheduler, let's say I send a direct link, and this is what would pop up. You can see now there's now the availability, so they could book, with me here, but they can also go to that form page, and here's the lead capture form to get them into the system. The combination of these two will take their appointment and put it in that project. So make sure that if they are not in the system yet, because if they are in the system, then there's some different processes you can work with. But if they're not in the system yet and they've never been entered into Dubsado and you want to send your ability to someone, always make sure you pair it up with a lead capture form, so that way they can choose their availability. Let's say we choose the 26th at 9:30, and we submit that. It takes us directly over to that capture form. They can fill out their information, where they heard about you. They can use the workflow element tool. So if you want workflows to start, they can click their options and say, oh, I'm interested in weddings. And then they can submit and finish. Now you'll notice that you have to book and fill out the lead capture form in order to submit and finish. You can't do one and submit. You have to do both. So that also helps as well, that they'll book an appointment with you and they'll also fill out lead capture form. So I definitely wanted to cover that because there are a lot of people that are just sending their scheduler out by itself, and you can do that, but it's not going to create that project. And we want to make sure that since this is the first time they're getting into the system, get them set up with the project so you have a place to communicate with them. You can get your workflows running, especially now with the project tracking. You can get that log so you can start tracking your referral rates and where people are coming from and all the good stuff. So that's all that I had today about lead captures and workflows, but I really hope this helped out to kind of get you to understand the beginning processes, because that's what the lead capture is designed to do. Is it's that beginning process, and then all of your different actions will flow from there. Your workflows will take off. If you're using the scheduler, you can pair it, and then that would start your process. So if you're having trouble kind of getting started into the system and just thinking about it from a macro level of, okay, well, where should I start? Think about the lead capture form and where people are going to be moving from that point. And that'll kind of help you map out your workflows. It'll give you a good idea on what content you need. Do I need this email to go out this option. If they choose this option, that means they're doing, maybe it's just contract invoice. I don't need a proposal in this process. So always write it out, map it out, and then build that content. And that's really going to help you guys to get some good direction on where to go. So let me pop over to Big Marker here. I know, let's see. I hope that you guys can see this okay. Hopefully you guys saw this just fine. Let me look at a couple of these questions here. Let's see on Facebook if everyone's able to see that. Looks like everyone can read that. So I'm going to pop back and forth here. I'll answer a couple of questions on Big Marker and I'll answer a couple of questions on Facebook as well. So let's see, can the budget field help to direct leads to the right workflow, or only the workflow element can do that? Sometimes the client's budget heavily influences what services are even applicable. That's a great question. So with that custom map field, with that, what I would recommend doing is you could make it a custom map field and fill it out later to reuse. But what I would do is I would make my workflow element tool, those answers would be your budget ranges. I've seen that a lot where if they're, like 0 to 5,000, click this, and then that would take them down a different workflow. If they're 10,000 to here, click that. That way you can kind of get a good gauge on it. And then maybe later, once you find out exactly what their budget is, maybe on another questionnaire, you could use that to map the actual dollar amount that they have. But at least to get them started, definitely use as your different answers on your lead capture, and that will kind of funnel them down the right path. Maybe you have different proposals. If they do 0 to 5,000, you have a completely separate proposal with different options for them to choose from. And then let's say if they're, 10,000, 20,000 or something like that, then you can have some different options for them on your proposal. So I definitely recommend kind of setting it up that way. Let's see here. Great question, Maxine. So Maxine asked, with the iframe code, that it works with Wix or Squarespace. Will it work with WordPress? It does work with WordPress. However, I do know that if your website is, I believe if it's hosted by WordPress, it does not work. But you can have it hosted from another space, and then you can use it. But WordPress doesn't allow, if it's hosted through them, they don't allow third parties to use embed codes on their system. So that's really on our end. That's more just how WordPress is set up. So I believe if it's hosted by WordPress, you're not able to use our iframe code because they kind of have it blocked on their end. But definitely, I think you can use a WordPress template and have it hosted somewhere else, then you're okay. So let's see here. All right, perfect. So we have some questions there. Let me jump over to Facebook and we'll answer some questions here. Let's see, do we have any questions? I'm kind of reading through. Let's see, open this up, see if we have any questions over here. I'm not seeing any in the Facebook community. It looks like there was just some questions a little bit, but nothing there. So yes, so with the lead capture form, guys, definitely if you are needing to kind of map out your workflows, understand where to go, how to things out, definitely do it from that lead capture perspective, and it will help out tremendously. Let's see here. Hosted with Bluehost, perfect. Yes, then you can definitely do that. Let's see. Awesome. Perfect, guys. Well, I'm going to jump off of here. I do have another call coming up soon, so I'll have to jump off of here. But if you guys do have questions, definitely write those in the Facebook community. So you guys who are on Big Marker, join our Facebook community. If you're not a part of that, you can write questions in there, because this was also streamed on our live video on Facebook. So you can ask questions in the comments there, and I can answer that. And if you guys do want to get a demo of this, a walkthrough, we have options for that. If you want to do a free 30-minute call, we have options for that. Just go to our website, Dubsado.com, and you can sign up for a call with us, and then we can help you map out some things. If you have certain questions to your process, we can kind of map some things out there. Awesome, guys. So I'm going to jump off of here, but have a great rest of the day. Next week for FAQ&A, what we're going to be talking about is project statuses, tags. So this is kind of piggybacking off of this and how statuses and tags work with your workflows, and it kind of streamlines and optimizes your process. So definitely come back next week. We do this every single Thursday, 9:45 a.m. PST, and we just cover a different topic every week. So we'll definitely see you guys again next week, and have an awesome day today.